won't waste your time too much with icebreakers. So I'll just hand over to Bhagavad Gita to talk about GPS for life's decisions.
Hare Krishna. Okay, I just want to know how many of us are actually, who's here for the first time? Is anybody here for the first time? Oh, cool. Okay, so I was glad to. Anyway, so how many of us actually have mobile phones here? How many of you have them on you? No, I'm not going to collect phones. How many of you have used a GPS on your phone before? Right. Did anybody everybody put your hands down, and whoever didn't put the hands up for that one, can you put your hands up? So all of you have used a GPS before. Why do you use the GPS? Anyway.
To get somewhere.
To get somewhere. Any other reasons? To find out where you are. Yep.
You don't know where you're going.
You don't know where you're going. So many reasons to use a GPS. Right? We use a GPS because we want to know where we're going. Maybe we know where we're going, but maybe there's traffic, maybe there's a roadblock or something along the way, right? So we use a GPS to try and find the different routes. Sometimes it's complex. You know, tomorrow maybe you're going out, I don't know, SSP or whatever it is that you're going to go to, and when you leave the door, your dad tells you, here's a parcel, go to the post office and just drop this off as well. And then your mum's going, bring some groceries back home. And maybe you yourself are thinking, let's go to the gym for a bit. Right? See some nods here. Right? But then you might use a GPS because you're like, okay, I have 5 different places to go to, and I want to know what's the most efficient, what's the best route to go to them. You don't want to go to the gym and then come here and then go all the place. You just want one nice simple route and come back. But when you think about it, right, then we have a GPS for all these different things in life that are external, like bus journeys, car journeys, train journeys, because the journeys are complex, right? But do you think about the decisions you make in life and what you use as a GPS for that? When we think about life's journey, we need a GPS as well, right? We need to know where we're going. We need to know the journey that we're taking. Most of you are probably here in year 12 or so, and you're probably thinking about career options now. How many of you are thinking about your career options? Or know that you're going to start thinking about them? Do you know what you're going to do? I see confused looks. So, here's another question for you. How many decisions do you think we take in a day? In a single day, how many decisions do you think we take? Just shout answers. Anyone? Take a guess.
5,000.
5,000. Okay. Anybody higher or lower?
8,000.
8,000. We get some girls. A lot. Okay. Quantify a lot.
10,000.
10,000. Anybody else?
100,000.
100,000.
500.
500. So modern research suggests that we make 35,000 decisions a day. How many are aware of all the decisions you take? In reality, only about 122 decisions are informed decisions, so decisions that we've actually thought about. So when we look at all of us sitting here today, most of us have been here for about 15, 20 minutes. Just think about the number of decisions you would have taken, right? 35,000 is one decision every 2.5 seconds. Every 2.5 seconds we make a decision. You made the decision to sit in those seats, in that specific spot. You made the decision to come here today. You made all these decisions without, most of them you're probably not even conscious of making decisions, right? So first thing before we move on is an appreciation for all of you and those who will be coming to take that decision to actually come here, to sit here, to support Pandava Sena and everything that Pandava Sena are doing to help us along our journey, right? To grow in our spiritual life as well as our careers and everything. And thank you for actually prioritizing your own growth, because you could equally have just been at home, just waiting for the football match to start. Although I know most of you are here waiting for the football match to start here. So when we make so many decisions, there is a question that always has to arise in our minds. When we're in a car and we come to a junction, right, or in a bus or anywhere, your parents driving, if you have a car or motorbike yourself, you come out a junction. Whether to turn left or right, you can use the GPS to tell you, depending on where you want to go. But what do we do when we want to make a decision in life, or we're at a fork in life where we don't know whether to pick option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Who do we turn to? What GPS anchors us in our life's decisions? So, that's the topic of today, GPS for life's decisions. And specifically, we're going to talk about something which all of us are familiar with here, at least 99% of us, and that is how the Bhagavad Gita is a GPS for life's decisions that we can use. A timeless wisdom, something that has been around for thousands of years, that most of us have probably only been familiar with it from the perspective of it being a Hindu book or something, but it's actually so much more than that. So, another question. When we talk about Bhagavad Gita, when I just shared this photo, what came to your mind? Let's have 5 answers. 5 answers of just the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the Bhagavad Gita. Knowledge. Mahabharata. Okay. I'm going to start standing this side.
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Anyone else? Okay, anyone? No, Krishna, Arjuna, nothing? So, why is the Bhagavad Gita a GPS for us? How can we see it as a GPS? When we actually study the Bhagavad Gita, when we read it properly, you've got so many Bhagavad Gitas here, already see 5 copies of the Bhagavad Gita here. So those of you who are in this school, you have no excuse to not read the Bhagavad Gita, by the way. GPS, what does the GPS show us, right? It helps us as we talk about the direction in life and so on and so forth. Where a GPS tells us where we are, somebody had said, I think it was Mother that said, tells us where we are. The Bhagavad Gita tells us who we are. Where a GPS shows us where we want to go in life, right? When we're at a fort, it tells us where to go. Bhagavad Gita shows us our life's destination. Where the Bhagavad Gita guides us where the GPS guides us on the path on how to get to where we want to go. The Bhagavad Gita guides us through life's inner journey. So we can see that actually there's a very big parallel between GPS and Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita shows us where we are, where we want to go, and how to get there for life. The GPS does it for the road journey that we're on, but the Bhagavad Gita shows it for life. And as somebody mentioned, right, Mahabharata. The context of the Gita is a Mahabharata book. But what's the context of the Gita in the Mahabharata book? It's Arjuna's dilemma, right? How many of us have heard of the story of Mahabharata, at least enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita? How the Bhagavad Gita came? Everyone? A couple of us about it? Okay. So the context, the basis of the Bhagavad Gita is a war that takes place thousands of years ago. And there's about 4 million warriors that are fighting in that war. 4 million, that's about half of London's population at war, fighting in the war. And we see that just before the war's about to start, Krishna and Arjuna come right to the middle of the battlefield. And Arjun's confused. Arjun's in distress. He's contemplating on his position. He's despondent. On the one side, he's on the battlefield to fight. But if he fights, then he risks the lives of all those he cares about, right? On the opposite side, it's his own family. And so Arjuna wants to actually run away from the battlefield. He wants to run to the forest. So he has a decision to make. But he really wants to run away. That's his initial thought. But right off the bat, Arjuna teaches us 2 critical things for decision making. One is that takes the time to think. He didn't decide that he wanted to run away and then just run away. And the second thing is that he consults with Krishna. He consults with others, somebody who's superior to him, somebody who's more knowledgeable, somebody who has wisdom, as somebody had mentioned with the Bhagavad Gita. So when we look at the Bhagavad Gita as just a religious book, we'll just see, okay, Krishna, Arjuna, battlefield of war. But when we look at the Bhagavad Gita through the lens of how to build our own character, how to build our life, we can see that Arjuna's facing a dilemma that we face in our life all the time. His dilemma affects the lives of millions. Our dilemma might affect our own life, or maybe those around us. There's still a dilemma that we go through. So when we look at Arjuna's example, there's a 3-step process that we can derive from what Arjuna's going through. And I'm going to call it the pause, the breathe, the proceed. We pause to take time to think. We breathe to take stock of the situation. Right? We think about, okay, what's actually going on. We consult with others in that phase. We ask those around us. We ask those who are superior to us, who are well-wishers, who know us well. But they have to be detached. They shouldn't be forceful about what you should do with your life. And then we proceed. Then we take the action. Right? The idea is to make consulted decisions, not whimsical actions. Right? But many of us, what do? Right? We're so enthusiastic about just making a decision. We're just so enthusiastic about doing something that we just skip the pause and the breathe. But actually, if we want to make good decisions, if we want to make decisions that are fruitful in our life, the secret of that is to maximize the pause and the breathe in a way that our life direction goes positively. In a way that we actually can bring some sort of, how to explain it? We bring a sort of a form of knowledge into our life that helps us know what we want to do with our decisions. So, before we move on, what we're going to do for the rest of this session is go through 5 jewels from the Bhagavad Gita, right? Just directly from the Bhagavad Gita, on how to maximize the pause and the breathe, so that we can build a more fulfilling life with our decisions. So, first one, don't trust the mind. Would anybody like to read the quote? Anybody?
For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy.
Right. So Krishna is teaching Arjuna, don't trust the mind. When we're making decisions, we naturally just go with the mind. We don't think about those decisions. But actually, when we look at it, then the mind naturally likes the path of least resistance. It likes to go with what is most easiest to do. Just think about any decisions you make. Naturally, the first thing that comes to mind is, what's the simplest thing? And that's quite dangerous. Many of us have decisions to make very soon about career options, things about the future, exams coming up probably in January if you have them, or at least at the end of mid next year, at the end of this academic year. But what does our mind tell us? Okay, don't worry about them right now. Focus on playing or watching football or whatever it is. And then what do we end up doing? We end up cramming before the exam, right? A couple of days before the exam, we're like, oh my God, we have an exam coming up. Cram, all-nighters. Or maybe you've got essays to write. Lastminute.com, moments before you're meant to give it, or maybe even after the deadline, you're still writing your essay and then you hand it in. UCAS is coming up for most of you. You're probably thinking about your options, but then when are you going to submit them? Like the day after UCAS is due. But when we think about these decisions, the way we make that process, then we actually understand that it's not helping. Yeah, okay, it gets us past that barrier initially. Okay, the exam's coming up, we pass the exam. But what it does is it builds really bad habits for us. Habits that will stay for you for the rest of your life, and you'll suffer going forward. Modern science, cognitive science, also says the same thing. When we're stressed, which is oftentimes when we're making decisions, the front part of our brain becomes weak. And when it becomes weak, you can see here, weak in control of thoughts, emotions, and actions. So when our brain is weak, when our thoughts, actions, emotions, our control over them is weak, how can we make right or good decisions? We can't. So the art of decision making is to de-stress our life. We can never have zero stress in our life, right? Unless you're a pure devotee. Then your stress is still there, but it's for Krishna. But we can at least minimize the stress that we go through. We should take control and not be controlled by the mind. Just like a football match. We have to talk about football now. Mind you, I'm not a big fan of football, I'm just saying, but I have to connect with you. Who are the best teams, right? Are the best teams the ones who are constantly just trying to force goals, or are they the ones who consistently control the ball, whether they're in defense or offense? It's the ones who are consistently controlling the ball. Same way, those who are consistently controlling the mind are the ones who are successful in life. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us that the best way to control the mind is by determination and by practice of yoga, meditation. And the best of all, the highest of all, is mantra meditation, right? So what does mantra mean? Right? Becoming free from the mind's control. So mantra meditation is that form of yoga or that form of meditation or practice that helps us be free from the mind's control. It helps us take control of the mind. And all of us know the best mantra there, right? But ignoring that for now, if you go across any spiritual path that is authentic, any major religious movement, mantra meditation is a core part of their routine. Christians, Islam, Judaism, Taoism, they all have mantra meditation. And we know when we go to the ancient Vedic scriptures, what's the mantra meditation that comes for us? Right? It's Mahamantra. Encompasses everything. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You all have been here before. Say it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, I'm being Krishna conscious, and let's look at the successful people of the world today. People like your Elon Musk, your Bill Gates, they all have meditation in their routine. If you practically look at any successful person in the world today, most of them will have some sort of meditation or yoga practice in their routine. So if we want to be successful, if we want to control and conquer the mind, for all of us, mantra meditation should be a thing we do. If we're not doing it, at least start with 10-15 minutes. You see the impact it has on our decision making. And if we're already doing it, make it a priority in our life. Oftentimes, especially when we're in school days or early like university days, we think, okay, I can't chant, I can't do my mantra meditation. I've got so much other things to do. But if you learn to prioritize the mantra meditation, the rest of your day, the rest of the decisions you have to make in the day, goes so much more smoother. And you can ask those around you that are chanting, that are practicing meditation. I'm sure there's many of us here that do that. Second, be guided by intelligence. Anybody else like to read?
The working senses are superior to Dharmata. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence.
Right. So Krishna here is telling Arjuna that instead of letting the mind make the decisions, we let the intelligence make the decisions. Oftentimes when we think about making decisions, one phrase often comes up. I don't know if it comes up for you guys, but it's just go with the flow. Has anybody heard of that phrase? Go with the flow. What does it mean? Right. Go along with whatever's happening. But do you know who or what goes with the flow? We use a phrase, but we don't know like the context behind it. Dead fish go with the flow. When you look at a river, you see fish in a river. 90% of the time, fish go in the opposite direction to the flow of the river. But if you see a fish that's going in with the flow of the river, you practically know it's dead. It's just floating. So is that the type of decisions we want to make? No? Just go with the flow. We should make it a point to actually be present in our decision making. We should make it a point to actually be active, wake up, take control of the mind, take control of the decisions, but also depend on Krishna in those decisions. So how do you do that with intelligence? So some of us are probably familiar with this diagram, right? This comes from our scriptures, the Upanishads actually. It's an analogy for ourself actually. The chariot, so the chariot, horse, everything, represents the body. Then you have the 5 horses, which are the 5 senses. The reins, these ropes, the mind. The chariot driver, the intellect. And then there's us, the passenger. Now imagine if the chariot driver just let go of the ropes. What would happen? The horses would just run wild, right? One horse will go that direction. One horse will go to Buckingham Palace. Another horse will run to the Thames River. Another horse will just run around in circles. And what's going to happen to the passenger? What's going to happen to us? We're going for one hell of a ride, right? But now imagine if the chariot driver, he has the strength to actually take control of the reins. He has the strength to actually control where the horses go. Then won't the horses be focused about what you want, where you want to go? The horses will naturally have to line up, because as soon as they want to go in the opposite direction, well, the chariot driver is bringing them back, going, this is the direction we're going in. So when we look at our decision making, are we letting the ropes loose, or are we taking control of the ropes? We should be looking at our intelligence and saying, are you strong enough to control the mind? Do you have the right intelligence, the right knowledge, the right information to control the mind? And one of the best sources of that information for the intelligence is the Bhagavad Gita, or our scriptures like the Bhagavad, because they help us build character, they help us build that strength to control the mind. You go to school, what do you learn? You learn about different academias, right? Arts, so on and so forth. It's expected that you would focus in school. But how do you grow and improve that focus? It's about learning how to control the mind so that you can focus. So if we want to make good decisions, if we want to be consistently going in the direction that we want to go in, maybe we don't know the direction yet. But if we want to follow a path and if we want to grow, then we need to learn to feed the intelligence with the knowledge that it needs to control the mind. Just learning about what the senses want, the horses want, isn't enough. So 3, work with life's dualities. Anybody like to read? Just read out, don't.
I don't know if you have the general part, or the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and the disappearance of details, like the appearance of and disappearance of winter and summer seasons.
So Krishna here is teaching that when we look at decisions we make, they have outcomes, right? Every decision we make has an outcome. That outcome can be positive, bring us happiness, or it can bring us distress. But we shouldn't be disturbed, right? Neither in the happiness nor the distress we should be disturbed. When we look at the different seasons, right, or the weather, hot versus cold, summer versus winter, we might not like the winter because it's cold, right? Some of us are wearing jackets right now because it's still cold inside. Maybe we don't like it, maybe we do. But we don't get so disturbed about it. Okay, it's cold, I need to wear a jacket, whatever it is. We just deal with it. Because we know that 6 months down the line, the summer will come, the warmth will come, and then you get to experience the warmth, and you'll be happy with that. And we know that the seasons go in a cycle. So it's not that it's just happening once, it's happening again and again and again and again. The cold comes, then the cold will go and the warmth will come. Spring comes, then summer, then autumn, then winter, and then it repeats. And Krishna is saying that our happiness and distress work exactly the same way. They're a cycle. Today we might be happy, but we know it just takes one thing and then we'll go in distress. And then when we're in distress, we think it's the end of the world a lot of the time. You're distressed about career options maybe. And you think, oh my God, if I don't make my decision now, my life is ruined. But actually, when we're in distress, all we have to do is just ride the wave of distress, and we know that the happiness will come. It's just a matter of time. It happens again and again. So how do we actually be not disturbed by these change of emotions, by constant flux that we go in? Right? And the way we can do that is by looking at our life and the world through the vision and the eyes of Krishna. When we do that, then we see that actually life and the life's dualities that we have is actually perfectly in balance, right? Yin and yang, that most of us would probably be familiar with yin and yang. It's a perfect balance. Two opposites are a perfect balance. And actually, the world is designed in a way that it's temporary. So there's always going to be something that happens now, and then the total opposite will happen the next day. It's designed to be like that. So whether we're in the elation of happiness or the miseries of distress, we shouldn't get so disturbed by either of them. We think that, okay, the goal of life is to always be happy. But is it really? Because who is always happy? If you're happy today, then you know it's only a matter of time until you have to experience some sort of misery. So you should be looking at the world with the vision of balance. Right? Work with the life's dualities. Don't get consumed by them. Yes, enjoy the happiness, but equally accept that the distressful times will go away. Number 4, remember the 3 modes. Anybody? Just shout out.
Material nature consists of 3 moods: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, he becomes conditioned by these moods.
So everything we do, decisions, activities, they're all affected by modes. What are these modes? Modes, the 3 modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, they're like different levels of consciousness. Goodness being the highest of the 3, and then ignorance being the lowest. When we look at decision making, then our decisions can also be affected by the 3 modes. Especially 3 specific compartments. One is the vision behind the decisions. When we look at the vision of somebody in the mode of goodness, they're actually thinking about the long-term vision. What's the future going to be like if I decide X? Somebody in the mode of passion is thinking about the short term. What can I get out of it now or very soon? Somebody in the mode of ignorance just lacks vision. They don't really care. What about the activity or that sort of process in the 3 modes? Somebody in the mode of goodness is ready to accept short-term struggles for the long-term gain. They're ready to accept that, okay, I don't like to study for maths, maybe, or whatever subject. But they know that if they put an hour each day, they'll hate it. But for the long-term benefit, it's beneficial. Somebody who knows the passion, though, they look at the short-term gain and they forget about the long-term. I don't feel like studying. Who feels like that sometimes? Whoever's not put their hand up, please speak to me because I want to know your secrets. Because I also hate studying. Somebody in the short term might hate studying, and instead of studying when they're meant to, they're just going to go, I don't want to study, so I'm not going to study. And somebody in the mode of ignorance will just have loss in the short term and long term. They're not really caring. They don't care, quite frankly. They just go with whatever comes. Oh, people around them are playing, okay, I'll play. People around them are watching football, I'll watch football. People around them are studying, okay, I'll just get a book out and pretend like I'm studying. What's the basis of those in the three modes I'm in when making decisions? Somebody in the mode of goodness makes decisions based on knowledge and regulation. They actually think about their decision in a way that they find out everything they need to make that decision as right as possible. And they're regulated. It's not that they don't have playtime. It's not that they don't watch football, okay? I'm not telling you that you should, at 7 o'clock, turn the football on. I mean, if you want to, I mean, better if you don't, for yourself, for your future. But it's not that they don't have fun. It's that they're regulated. They know, okay, they're going to set time aside and make sure, okay, this is all I'm going to enjoy today. Somebody in the mode of passion is driven by impulse and desire. I feel like doing this, I'm going to do this. I feel like doing that, I'm going to do that. I should be doing this, but I can't be bothered. Somebody in the mode of ignorance is just lazy and detrimental. The path of least resistance at its full force. And oftentimes, as we know, that does lead to detrimental behaviors. So when we think about the three modes when we're making decisions, we can look at this table and think, okay, maybe we can reflect on our decisions so far, or very recently, and go, okay, what sort of mode have our decisions been in? Were they more ignorance, passionate, or goodness? And we should try and cultivate the mindset of practicing how to make decisions more in the mode of goodness, more sattvic by nature. So then we can think about the long term. Think about acquiring the knowledge, the details, the information that we need to make decisions. I mean, that's the basis of decision making, right? If we know what, or as much as possible, the outcomes are going to be from each of those decisions, we'll actually make more informed decisions. Now think 20 years down the line, you want to travel by private jet, right? Then you have to cultivate habits today that help you lead to that point. That's looking at the long term, that's looking at sattvic. But then that means that you also have to meditate on all your decisions so that you can look at them and go, is this conducive to my long-term vision? So we can use the three modes to help us make decisions. But for that, we have to do the effort of meditating on our decisions. We have to learn to accept short-term struggles. It's a pain sometimes. But if you look at any successful person, they've been through tremendous struggles in life. They've accepted that short-term struggle to attain and become what they have become today. Number 5, embrace the psychophysical. Can we have a lady to speak, please?
We can learn from each acts according to his own nature, but everyone follows the nature and he is applied in humans. What kind of passion comes?
We all have our own nature. We're all individuals. We all are unique. Oftentimes we might look around the room, we might turn the TV on and look at all the successful people out there and think, wow, they're so good at what they do. I want to become like them, right? Sometimes we might think that. Especially more relevant to those with an Asian background, sometimes even peer pressure or family pressures on certain behaviors or certain lifestyle choices. Happens with Europeans as well. Happens with every culture practically. And that's good. It's nice when it's an inspiration, when it's seen as an inspiration, that we can grow and improve in that way. But oftentimes it becomes an obsession for us and we don't even realize it. We want to try and become like somebody or become successful in a certain field so much that we're ignoring what our own nature, what our own unique abilities are. Sometimes we forget ourselves so much in trying to become somebody else that we lose ourselves, and it just becomes detrimental. It's not good for us. So whenever we're making decisions, and the immediate thing that usually comes to mind for people is careers and life choices like that, whether we get married or whatever. But actually, when we look at the natures, our own psychophysical nature, it doesn't apply just for those sorts of decisions. It applies for all decisions we make. Just think about a very simple thing, an introvert versus an extrovert, right? What does an introvert like to do? They like to be more secluded. They like to be more with themselves. The extroverted people like to go out there. They like to hang around with big groups of people. As a society, to be honest, we favor extrovert natures. And so what does that make the introverted person do? They feel like, oh, they're the odd ones out. They need to become more extroverted. They need to mix in with the crowd. So even though their nature doesn't allow them to go out and hang around big groups of people, sometimes they do it because they feel like they should. They want to fit in. But then that takes a toll in the health. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that before. When you're not acting in your nature, it will take a toll on you. So actually, this is relevant for all of our decisions. And as we know, the Bhagavad Gita gives us a varnashram system, specifically looking at varnas, right? Occupational duties. So, Shastrically, there are 4 described. First one are your brahmanas. These are traditionally your priests. Then there's Kshatriyas, who are traditionally your kings or your warriors, right, the fighters. Then there's the Vaishyas, who are your farmers or your merchants. And then there's the Shudras, who are the workers, who thrive in serving and supporting the other 3. Okay, that's the traditional old thing. It doesn't apply anymore. Those who have a very traditional parents will probably recognize this as a caste system. But actually, we see that all 4 are needed in society, and they're applicable today as well. Your brahmanas are people like your scientists or your educators. Your kshatriyas are like your lawyers. Your vaishyas are like your entrepreneurs, the people who we usually see from the very rich people that we sometimes think that we want to become. And your shudras are your workers, those who just thrive on just supporting the others. And we can see these 4 in a very simple way. Brahmanas are your thinkers, Kshatriyas are your leaders, Vaishyas are your profit makers, and Shudras are your workers. All 4 of these are needed in today's society to function as well. This is just one example of the natures, just for time purposes I only kept 1. But whenever we're making decisions, before we make the decision, we should introspect and try and understand, okay, what is our nature? Not just occupational nature, not just the ashram or the situation or the stage of life either, but identify and really figure out ourselves out. What types of things do we like? Not what things do we like, but what types of things do we like? Do we like going out? Do we like staying in one place? Do we like being active? Do we like being passive? All these things add to our nature. The decision-making process isn't about making the best decisions or the most profitable decisions, as we sometimes think. Sometimes, especially with careers, we think, okay, what will make us the most money? Right? Sometimes that does come up. But actually, decision-making is about making the right choice, the right decision for us. The right decision for me might be different for you, might be different for you. And that's okay. Everybody's right decision is different. But that right decision becomes a perfect decision for us when we're accounting for all of our nature, all of our psychophysical nature. So, to wrap up, 5 things from the Gita is what we looked at today. And that's just a taste of what the Gita offers, right? Just decision making. Think about all the other topics that you can think of that you can derive from the Bhagavad Gita. So 5 jewels being mind. Don't trust the mind. The mind becomes weak in decision making, but we can strengthen it through things like mantra meditation. be guided by intelligence. If the intelligence is strong through things like Bhagavad Gita or character building skills, then we can make consistently good decisions. Work with life's dualities. Don't get consumed by what's going on with life, but observe and see it as a way to build your own character. 4, remember the 3 modes. Try and develop the attitude and the culture to become more sattvic in your decision making. To look at the long-term vision, to actually think, okay, let me be regulated about what I'm doing. And 5, embrace the psychophysical. Actually embrace it. There's nothing wrong with being unique. In fact, it's better to be unique. Otherwise, we wouldn't have millionaires who come out and shoot out of nowhere. We wouldn't have Prabhupada come out and shoot out of nowhere. We talked about the GPS for life's decision. But I'm going to say that the Bhagavad Gita is actually a GPS for life. And we should embrace that too. Any questions? 5 minutes before the guys start. Okay.
So my question is that should these like 5 kind of criteria be applied to every decision you make?
Yeah, so if we go back to the conclusion, right? If we make decisions with our mind, what's the guarantee that we're not making sloppy decisions with a weak control? If we're not being guided by intelligence, which is strengthened by the right things, how do we know that we're not going down the wrong path? If we're not looking at life's dualities, then say the decision happens to be wrong, right? Or it happens to bring us distress. We'll get consumed by it and we go like, oh my God, I made the wrong decision. When in fact, we should just accept that I made an informed decision and this was the outcome. If we look at, remember the 3 modes, then we can always think about, okay, what is the future plan? Don't just think about today. If we just think about today, then we might forget about the future. Embrace the psychophysical. All of our natures are different. If I'm making decisions thinking that my nature is like yours, but I'm totally different, I'm just going to become distressed in the future. I'm not going to be satisfied.
Just to follow on from that, all of these I'm assuming would take a certain chunk of time to be able to do all of them properly. So what do you do if there's kind of split-second important decisions?
Describe them.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of the top of my head. If anyone has any suggestions, please help. But yeah, like you're on the last question in the maths paper. What do you do? Like, do you split your time, or just like write something out? Like, what do you do? Like important decision.
So the cheeky answer is that you'd be so prepared that actually you plan and regulate your time to the questions, right? But no, I understand what you're saying. The reality is that we always have, even that split second, when we're starting off thinking about these 5 things, yeah, it's difficult, it's hard to do, we have to make it a conscious effort to think about these 5 things. But think about anything that you've done, right? Like think about tying your shoelaces. Do you really think about tying your shoelaces? Even if you've only got 5 seconds to do it, you'll be thinking about something else and naturally you just tie your shoelace or putting the jacket on. It becomes almost second nature to just do it. So with practice, it becomes second nature to do these. But yeah, if you have to make those because there's a genuine reason, like you have to give an answer now, then yeah, take that time you can and try and cram in as much as the thought process you can. But if it's split second, it's split second. But again, don't get bogged down by what comes out. Accept life's dualities. Whatever comes, comes. Any other questions? Comments? Don't be shy.
You talked about how like embracing the psychophysical, that we're unique, so we have to take the path that's right for us, and it might not be right for somebody else. But when taking advice from other people, often people are giving advice from their own perspective. and even when offering advice to other people, I'll give it from my perspective. So how do we, I guess, when we're receiving advice, how do we make sure that, like, we're not, I feel that for me personally, I'm often swayed by what other people think. And if someone tells me, oh, I think this is the right path for you, then I'm much more likely to pick that path, even if I'm not completely convinced. It will like plant a seed in my head, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is something I should do. So how do we avoid making the wrong decisions based on advice other people are giving us?
So you might have missed it at the start. We were talking about how Arjuna had taken advice from Krishna, right? It wasn't just because Krishna was God, but Krishna was a well-wisher. He was a superior, knowledgeable, skilled, but also one of the most important qualities was that Krishna was detached from Arjuna's decision. What does that mean? It means that, okay, Krishna might have had his preference about what Arjuna did, but he didn't impose it on Arjuna. He didn't go, Arjun, I know what I'm talking about, you do what I'm saying, and your life will be successful. So when we've taken advice or giving advice, we need to learn to also be detached. We need to go, okay, I have my part, they have their part, and they're giving advice, or let's go with that scenario for now. They're giving us advice based on the path that they chose, the experiences that they've had. We take it on board, but we don't make it our mission to follow it. Because otherwise what will happen is that your dad will say one thing, your mum will say another thing, your teacher will say a third thing, your friend will say a fourth thing. How are you going to make a decision, right? So we take all four of those and we think about it. That's where the thinking comes in, where we be guided by intelligence. We go, okay, let's look at each of those options and see how well it works for me. And like I said, it's not that we always make the right decision or the perfect decision. It has to be right for you. Maybe you don't know a fifth option. Maybe there is one, but you don't know it. Try and be informed about that fifth option, but it's not always possible. So out of those four, or mix if you can, then create and carve the path that's right for you. It might not be 100% for you in terms of the way you're thinking, but if it's the best option available, then that's the best or the right option for you, right? I don't know if that helps.
Sorry to recover this. There are times when you're blinded by emotion and you can't restrain yourself and you just make certain decisions. Do you have any advice on what to do in that situation?
So one thing we spoke about is, there's a process that we're describing. It's the pause, the breathe, and the proceed. When we get overwhelmed by emotions, it's quite natural that we just go with whatever the mind comes up with and just go with it. But we need to try and follow, if we're systematic, right? Whenever we're learning anything in school, what do we usually do? We learn the process of what we're doing, right? Just rote learning. And then we apply it. So if whenever we're making decisions, we just rote learn, okay, I need to do this, 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 and then make a decision, then chances are that as we mature in that process, then even in those situations where we're overwhelmed, then we'll also follow this process. It becomes second nature. So it's unavoidable sometimes that we just make those decisions out of emotion. But the more we become aware of the process and practice it, it helps us. It's for anything we do. Think about, I don't know, just coming to school, right? Coming to university, wherever you are. It's not that you woke up one day and you knew how, that, okay, I'm gonna go to the shower, dress, eat, come to school. It took you time to figure out how you're going to do things, and then you figured out, okay, it takes me 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it does. It took you time to do that. In the same way, it's going to take you time to develop or change your mindset in a way that helps you. Anyone else? Thank you again for coming. Feedback is always welcome. Who's going to take over?
So, can you guys have a round of applause?